The sky above Zithera burned a deep violet as the sun sank behind jagged mountains. The capital city, a sprawling network of metallic towers and glimmering bridges, hummed with activity, though tension shadowed the streets. King Vorin sat upon his throne in the high chamber of the palace, his massive hands resting on the arms of carved obsidian. His eyes, sharp and calculating in most matters, were clouded with worry. "Reports from the frontier are troubling," said Commander Thalric, bowing low. His armor reflected the fading light like shards of broken glass. Vorin did not respond. Immediately, his mind was with his daughter, Princess Liara. She had left at dawn with the royal battalion, the finest warriors Zithera had to offer, to push back a hostile alien force threatening the border planets. It was the first time Liara had led men into battle herself. She was fierce, skilled, and fearless, everything Zithera prided itself on. But even the strongest warrior was not invincible. "Sir," Thalric said again, his voice tight. "Communications were lost near Sector 12. We have no confirmation of their status. We fear the worst." Vorin's fists clenched. "The worst? You mean she—" "Your Highness." Thalric hesitated, careful. "It is possible. She did not survive the ambush." Silence filled the chamber. The weight of the words pressed down on the king like a stone. He had trained all his life for this moment, to rule Zithera, to protect it from enemies, to make hard decisions. But no training could prepare him for losing his only child in war. Meanwhile, on a distant, barren world many light years from Zithera, a human named Captain Elias maneuvered his small exploration vessel through an asteroid field. Unlike the Zitherans, humans did not have a single hive-like military structure. Elias relied on ingenuity, speed, and quick thinking, skills honed over years of exploring dangerous, uncharted space. He adjusted the ship's thrusters, narrowly avoiding a jagged rock that would have shredded the hull. A warning light flashed red. "Not today," he muttered, grinning. He had faced countless near-death situations before, but something in this region felt different. Suddenly, his sensors detected a faint signal, a life form. Not Zitheran, not any species he recognized, just a faint, uneven pulse on a barren planet below. Curiosity sparked in him. Humans had long learned that curiosity was often survival's closest companion. He guided the ship down, landing with a controlled thump. The airlock hissed as it opened. Elias' boots touched the rocky surface. The planet was harsh and desolate, a storm of red dust whipping around him. His visor scanned the ground. And then he saw her, a figure lying among jagged stones, her armor dented and scorched. Liara's chest rose and fell with shallow breaths. Her long, silver hair was tangled with dirt, and her purple eyes, though half closed, burned with defiance. She was alive, but barely. Elias wasted no time. He pulled her to the safety of his ship, assessing her injuries. A broken arm, deep cuts across her legs, and a weak pulse. "Hang on," he said, applying a stabilizing field. "You're not dying today." Liara's eyelids flickered. She tried to speak, but only a rasp escaped. Elias nodded. He had no idea who she was or what she was running from, but one thing was clear. This alien warrior had survived something deadly. That kind of spirit, even in humans, was rare. Among Zitherans, it was legendary. Back on Zithera, King Vorin could not bear the waiting any longer. He demanded a council of war, the palace filled with generals, advisors, and nobles, all whispering and speculating. "She is gone, Your Majesty," said one counselor softly. "We should begin mourning." Vorin slammed his fist on the table, silencing them. "No, she is alive. I feel it. My daughter has never failed me." "But sir," a young general protested, "our scouts report the battlefield was a massacre. No survivors were found. We cannot ignore the facts." Vorin's eyes blazed. "Facts are not truth. She is my daughter, and until I see her body, I will not accept her death." The council fell silent, fear and uncertainty filling the room. Zithera had survived countless wars, but never had its king been so personally challenged. The weight of the empire rested on Voron's shoulders, and the absence of his daughter left a hollow ache he could not soothe. Meanwhile, on the red-tinged planet, Elias had managed to stabilize Liara enough to move her into the ship's cabin. She groaned as she regained consciousness, her eyes opening slowly. "Who are you?" she whispered, her voice weak. "Elias," he said simply. "I'm human, and I just saved your life." Liara studied him, suspicion flashing across her face. Humans were unpredictable, loud and reckless. They often acted without planning, a trait Zitherans considered reckless at best, and yet this human had saved her from certain death that could not be ignored. "Why, help me?" she asked, voice trembling. "Because it's what I do," Elias replied, trying to keep his tone light. "Besides, I didn't like the look of that predator." Liara's lips twitched, a faint hint of a smile. Even in her pain, she recognized humor, a trait many Zitherans lacked in battle. She had survived ambushes, poison traps, and brutal terrain, yet somehow this human made surviving seem possible. The planet's storms raged outside, shaking the ship. Liara's mind raced. She needed to return to Zithera, to her father, to her people. But she was injured, and the enemy might still be nearby. And now, a human, a species almost unheard of in her sector, was by her side. Elias noticed her gaze, reading the unspoken question. "I can get us out of here, but you need to trust me." Liara's pride bristled. Zitheran warriors rarely relied on outsiders, but survival was not about pride, it was about strategy. And right now, survival meant trusting a human. The journey back to Zithera would not be simple. They had to navigate hostile terrain, avoid enemy patrols, and keep Liara alive long enough to reach the border. Yet for the first time in days, Liara felt a spark of hope. Far above, in the high chambers of Zithera, King Voron stared at a holographic map of the battlefield. The memory of his daughter charging into the enemy lines haunted him. Every stone, every river, every ridge of the frontier planet was etched into his mind. "She's alive," he whispered to himself, his voice echoing in the empty room. "I can feel it." The council, still unaware of her possible survival, debated strategies for consolidation and defense. Yet Voron's mind was elsewhere, thinking of the warrior who had defied death, who had led his battalion with courage beyond measure. That warrior was his daughter, and she would return. Somewhere between the red rocks and stormy skies, Liara stirred. Elias prepared the ship for takeoff, unaware of the galactic storm they were about to enter. Together, human and alien, they would face dangers no single species could survive alone. As the twin suns set, casting long shadows across the rocky landscape, a quiet truth settled between them. The galaxy was far larger and stranger than either of them had imagined, and in the coming days, that truth would challenge everything they knew about courage, loyalty, and the bonds that could form between the most unlikely allies. The adventure had only just begun. The red dust swirled violently outside the small cabin of Elias's ship. The storm made every movement a struggle, but inside, Liara lay on a stretcher, her breathing steady, yet weak. Elias adjusted the stabilizing field, his hands moving with careful precision. He was not a healer, not by any strict definition, but humans had a habit of improvising solutions that even the most disciplined alien minds could not predict. Liara's eyes flickered open again. She blinked, her purple gaze sharp despite exhaustion. "Where am I?" she asked, voice hoarse. "You're safe," Elias said, keeping his tone calm. "I got you out of there." Liara's pride flared, mingled with confusion. Zitherans were warriors from birth. They rarely needed saving, and yet here she was, alive because of a human, something she had never imagined possible. She struggled to sit up. Pain shot through her arm and ribs, forcing her to groan. "You shouldn't be moving," Elias said gently, helping her back. "Down. We need to get you to Zithera, but not like this. You're injured and the border is dangerous." We move carefully. Liara studied him. She had always trusted her instincts in battle, reading situations and enemies with unmatched precision. This human, he seemed reckless, yet capable. He had saved her from certain death on a planet filled with predators and enemy patrols. That alone earned him a small measure of respect. What are you? She asked finally. I'm human, Elias said. Captain Elias, explorer, survivor. I get into trouble and sometimes I get out. Liara's lips twitched. Humor, even in such a desperate situation, was rare for Zytherans. She had fought and lost comrades, yet this human seemed calm, even light-hearted in the face of chaos. I see, she said. Then, Captain, we must move. We cannot stay here. My people, my father, they will assume I am dead. Elias nodded. And we can't have that. But we need a plan. The storm is violent, and the enemy might still be in the area. We can't just rush back. Liara paused, considering. Zytheran strategies were usually rigid. Move in formation, eliminate threats, take control. But this human's approach felt different, flexible, adaptive, perhaps even smarter in some situations. Very well, she said. Lead the way, but do not assume I will follow blindly. Elias smiled faintly. I wouldn't want you to. The two of them left the ship cautiously. The landscape was harsh, covered in jagged rocks and red dust. The air burned slightly, with the storm's energy, but Elias navigated the terrain as if he had done it 100 times before. Liara, despite her injuries, kept pace, using her combat training to balance and avoid hazards. As night fell, the sky turned a deep, violent red. Shadows stretched long across the terrain, and the wind screamed like the cries of lost warriors. They found temporary shelter in a cave carved into the side of a rocky ridge. Inside, the darkness was almost complete, broken only by the dim lights from Elias's portable equipment. Rest, Elias said. You need strength to continue. Liara shook her head. We cannot afford rest. The enemy may have survivors. My battalion. She paused, voice catching. They may still be alive. Elias glanced at her, noting the fire in her eyes. Then we find them. But first, you heal. You can't lead if you're broken. She nodded reluctantly. For the first time, she allowed herself to trust someone outside her species. Humans were unpredictable, but they had a certain honesty. No hidden agendas. No complex hierarchies, demanding obedience. Just action. The storm raged through the night, yet by morning, Liara felt stronger. Elias had used a combination of stabilizing fields, basic medical techniques, and improvised remedies to help her recover. Zytherans would have scoffed at the simplicity of his methods, but she could feel the results. They set out again, navigating the treacherous planet. Soon they discovered the wreckage of what had once been Liara's battalion. Armor and weapons lay scattered, scorched and broken. Some bodies had been claimed by the elements, others vanished entirely. Liara's heart clenched. She knelt beside a broken Zytheran shield, touching the insignia of her battalion. They didn't all make it, she whispered. Elias said nothing, letting her mourn. He had learned that humans and aliens expressed grief differently. Silence could sometimes be more powerful than words. Suddenly, movement caught their attention. Shadows shifted among the rocks. Enemies, survivors. They crouched, observing. A small group of wounded Zytheran soldiers emerged from hiding, shocked to see Liara alive. Their eyes widened. "Princess!" one cried, rushing forward despite his injuries. Liara rose slowly, extending her hand. "We survived. Stick with me, and we'll return to Zythera." Elias watched silently, impressed. These aliens, though injured and frightened, were willing to follow her despite the odds. He realized that courage was not unique to humans, yet humans had a strange flexibility that even the bravest warriors sometimes lacked. The group moved carefully, Elias scouting ahead. His human senses picked up dangers the Zetherans overlooked. Subtle shifts in the ground, faint signs of predator movement, even the distant hum of enemy patrols. He guided them, avoiding ambushes and hazards, relying on logic and improvisation rather than strict protocol. By evening, they found a river valley, sheltered from the winds. Liara watched Elias construct a small camp using materials around them. She could not deny it. Humans had a strange, resourceful brilliance. He made do with almost nothing, creating warmth, food, and protection in a hostile environment. "You think differently," she said quietly, studying him as he worked. Elias looked up. "I have to. On my world, thinking differently can mean the difference between life and death." Liara considered this. In Zithra, failure was often met with punishment, structure, and strict hierarchy. Humans, however, survived because they adapted. They solved problems without waiting for orders. This could be useful. Perhaps even revolutionary. Night fell, and the group settled. Liara kept watch for hours, her mind racing. Could she bring humans into Zithra? Could she convince her father that a human, a stranger from a distant world, was worth trusting? The idea seemed almost laughable. Yet Elias's actions had already saved her life. More than that, he had saved others. As the stars rose over the red horizon, Liara spoke quietly. "Captain Elias, you have my thanks, and my respect. I never thought I would trust a human, but you've earned it." Elias gave a small smile. "Then I'll keep earning it. But we have a long way to go before Zithra, and I have a feeling this is just the beginning." The next day, as they moved closer to Zithra's borders, danger increased. Enemy patrols were everywhere. The terrain itself seemed designed to kill. But together, Liara and Elias found ways to survive. He used traps and diversions, teaching the Zithrans to move differently, to think differently. Liara, initially skeptical, began to see the value in this approach. By the time they neared Zithra's outer systems, the bond between human and princess was undeniable. Liara respected his courage, and he admired her determination. Both were warriors in their own right, different in methods yet united in purpose. Elias glanced at the horizon. "The hardest part is still ahead," he said. "Getting into Zithra without causing a political disaster." Liara nodded, her eyes determined. "Then we will do it together. My people may not understand yet, but they will see. Survival, courage, and ingenuity can come from the most unlikely places." The storm behind them had passed, but new challenges loomed. Politics, prejudice, and suspicion awaited them at Zithra's gates. Yet Liara felt hope for the first time in days. She had survived impossible odds, discovered allies in unexpected places, and learned that strength could take many forms. The horizon of Zithra's outer systems appeared as a thin, shimmering line. Liara's purple eyes scanned the approaching planet, her heart heavy with conflicting emotions. She had survived the ambush, navigated a harsh frontier, and formed an unlikely alliance with a human, Captain Elias. Yet as the gleaming towers of her homeworld grew closer, doubt and unease settled over her. "Are you ready?" Elias asked, adjusting the controls of their small craft. His eyes flicked to the sensors tracking possible threats in orbit. Liara straightened. "I have no choice. My father believes me dead. The kingdom will assume defeat. We must return." Elias nodded. "Then let's make sure we survive long enough to fix that." Their ship pierced Zithra's atmosphere with minimal resistance. From above, the capital looked peaceful, serene even, with sunlight glinting off metallic towers. But they both knew appearances were deceiving. War and politics had left scars across the empire, and Liara's return would not be universally welcomed. The first challenge came as they neared the royal gates. Patrol drones scanned the skies, detecting intruders immediately. Elias maneuvered the ship with practiced skill, dodging detection fields and skimming dangerously close to the surface. Liara's heart pounded, not from fear of battle, but from the knowledge that every moment counted. One misstep and they could be killed or imprisoned before even reaching the king. "Prepare for landing," she said. "We need to appear as survivors, not invaders." Elias followed her lead, skillfully landing the ship in a secluded courtyard outside the city. Smoke from the landing thrusters mingled with the dawn mist. They were safe for now, but their challenge was far from over. Stepping onto Zitharan soil was strange for Liara. Memories of training, of battles fought and lost, of comrades fallen flooded her mind. Her armor was battered, her wounds still aching, but her spirit remained unbroken. Elias, on the other hand, moved with cautious curiosity, absorbing every detail of this alien world. "Follow me," Liara whispered. "We need to reach the palace," without drawing attention. The two of them moved through winding alleys, avoiding patrols and curious citizens. Word traveled fast in Zithara, and rumors of a human escorting a presumed dead princess would spread like wildfire. They could not risk being captured before reaching the king. As they navigated the city, they encountered small groups of soldiers. Each time, Elias demonstrated human ingenuity. He created diversions using simple tools, confusing the patrols and allowing them to pass. Liara could not help but notice how different his methods were from Zitharan tactics. Rigid formations and orders were replaced by creativity and quick thinking. Finally, they reached the outer courtyard of the royal palace. The massive gates loomed above them, guarded by heavily armed soldiers. Liara's heart tightened. She had faced enemies in battle, yet the thought of confronting her father under these circumstances was far more daunting. "Stay close," she said to Elias, "and be ready for anything." The gates opened slightly, allowing them entrance after a tense inspection. Liara's identity was confirmed. Her insignia, though battered, marked her as the royal heir. Yet the presence of a human at her side caused immediate unrest among the palace guards. "Princess Liara," one officer whispered. You are alive. But who is this human?" Liara straightened. "He saved my life. Without him, I would not have returned." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Trusting a human was unthinkable for many Zitharans. Humans were considered outsiders, unpredictable and potentially dangerous. Yet Liara's calm authority silenced most dissenters. Inside the palace, King Vorin awaited. The throne room was grand, filled with advisors and generals. The king's massive frame seemed smaller somehow without his daughter beside him. When he saw her enter, alive and determined, his eyes widened in shock. "Liara, is it truly you?" he asked, voice thick with emotion. "Yes, father," she said firmly. "I have returned." Vorin stepped forward, his hands trembling slightly. He looked from Liara to Elias, then back. "And this human? He accompanies you?" "He saved my life, father," Liara replied. "He fought alongside me, helped the survivors, and brought us back safely. I trust him, and you should as well." The room fell silent. Some generals bristled at the idea of a human entering the palace, but Liara's courage and conviction were undeniable. Vorin felt a mix of relief, pride, and unease. His daughter was alive, stronger than ever, yet she had returned with a species. He barely understood. "The border is secure?" he asked cautiously. Liara nodded. "Thanks to him, yes. But there are still dangers. Enemy forces may regroup, and more may come. We must be prepared." Vorin studied Elias carefully. Humans were known for their adaptability, cunning, and courage, qualities Zitharans respected in battle, but they were also unpredictable. Yet Elias's presence alone had ensured his daughter's survival. Vorin felt a grudging respect forming. "You have done well, Liara," he said finally. "And, human, you have my thanks. You have proven your worth." Elias inclined his head. "I only did what was necessary to survive, and to save lives." Even as they spoke, news of Liara's return spread throughout the palace. Political rivals whispered among themselves. Conservative generals frowned, unwilling to accept a human as an ally. while younger officers and progressive leaders saw a new opportunity. The presence of a human who had survived Zitharan battlefields challenged every assumption about outsiders. Liara understood the tension. She knew she had to prove that Elias's methods and courage were not only effective but essential. "Father," she said, stepping forward, "the galaxy is larger and more dangerous than Zithara alone. Humans like Elias are resourceful and brave. We cannot afford to ignore them. They can teach us new ways to fight, survive, and even thrive." Voran's brow furrowed. "It is difficult to trust a species so foreign to us, but I see the truth in your words. You returned alive, and with survivors. That cannot be ignored." Before further discussion could continue, alarms blared. Sensors detected an approaching enemy fleet larger than anything Liara had anticipated. Patrols confirmed ships were massing near the outer systems, preparing for a coordinated strike. Liara and Elias exchanged glances. The fight was not over. In fact, it had only just begun. "Father," Liara said, her voice commanding, "we must act. The enemy thinks we are weak. They do not know what humans can do." Voran nodded, a flicker of pride in his eyes. "Prepare the defenses. Gather our best commanders. And bring this human into our strategy. He may teach us something no Zitharan ever could." Elias felt a strange mixture of respect and pressure. He had survived alien planets, deadly predators, and harsh terrain. But now he faced the challenge of teaching an entire civilization to think differently. Yet he remained calm. Humans thrived in impossible situations. This would be no different. As the sun set over the capital city, casting long shadows across the palace towers, Liara, Elias, and King Voran stood together, overlooking the preparations. The battle to reclaim security, to protect the kingdom, and to change perceptions of humans had begun. Liara's purple eyes burned with determination. "We fight not only for survival," she said softly, "but for understanding, for trust, and for a future where differences make us stronger, not weaker." The first strikes would come at dawn. Enemy fleets were approaching rapidly, underestimating Zithara's capacity to fight back, especially now, with the combined ingenuity of a human and the courage of a princess who refused to die. Elias adjusted his gear, preparing for the coming storm. He glanced at Liara, who readied herself for battle despite lingering injuries. "We'll show them what humans and Zitharans together can do," he said. Liara nodded. "And maybe we can change the galaxy's idea of humans forever." The palace trembled with anticipation. Soldiers sharpened weapons, strategists mapped enemy movements, and somewhere deep inside, King Voran realized that the bond forming between human and princess might be Zithara's greatest advantage. As night fell completely, the stars above, Zithara seemed to shimmer brighter. They were silent witnesses to a new alliance, one that could defy centuries of tradition, prejudice, and expectation. And when the sun rose, the first battle of a new era would begin. The first light of Zithara's sun touched the palace towers, glinting off the metallic surfaces and casting long shadows over the city. Soldiers and strategists moved quickly, preparing for the inevitable confrontation. The enemy fleet, larger than any the Zitharans had faced in decades, loomed on their sensors, advancing rapidly toward the planet. Liara stood on the observation balcony beside her father, King Voran, her armor still showing the scars of past battles. Captain Elias was beside her, scanning the incoming fleet, his human mind already calculating possibilities and outcomes. "The enemy underestimates us," Liara said, her voice firm. "They think they can strike without resistance. But they don't know what we're capable of, especially now." Elias nodded. "They've never faced humans before, at least not in combat like this. Their assumptions will be their weakness." Voran's gaze moved between his daughter and the human beside her. He had spent centuries trusting only Zitharan tactics, relying on rigid formations and strict rules. Yet Elias's ideas, though unconventional, had already saved Liara and some of her battalion from death. He was beginning to understand that perhaps humans brought a perspective Zitherans had never considered. "Tell me," Vorin said cautiously, "what do you propose?" Elias gestured to a holographic display of the enemy fleet. "They'll approach in 3 main formations, confident in their superiority. Standard Zitharan tactics would meet them head-on, but that would be predictable. I suggest we split our forces, use smaller units to flank and set traps. We can create confusion and force them into mistakes." Liara's eyes sparkled. "Yes, use misdirection. They rely on predictability. We can exploit that, and we can combine your methods with our strength. This could work." Vorin frowned. "It is risky." Elias smiled faintly. "All battles worth winning are." The palace gates opened, allowing the assembled army to move into position. Soldiers, armored and armed, lined up in formations that reflected Zitharan tradition. Yet under Elias's guidance, some units were divided into smaller groups, hidden strategically, ready to strike where the enemy least expected. As the enemy fleet entered orbit, a deep hum filled the air, the sound of hundreds of ships maneuvering for attack. Sensors showed their formations precise, disciplined, and deadly, yet Elias's plan relied on unpredictability, something their adversaries could not anticipate. Liara and Elias led a reconnaissance team to the outskirts of the city, observing the enemy from a rocky ridge. They had to coordinate the strikes perfectly. One misstep could mean disaster. "Remember," Elias said, "we fight smarter, not just harder. Use the terrain, use confusion, make them doubt themselves." Liara nodded, understanding instantly. In combat, confidence was everything. If the enemy hesitated even for a moment, it could turn the tide of battle. Suddenly, enemy scouts spotted movement near the ridge. Laser fire erupted, and a group of Zitharan soldiers scrambled for cover. Elias reacted immediately, using makeshift barriers and tactical maneuvers to protect them. Liara, despite her injuries, fought alongside him, combining Zitharan strength and discipline with human improvisation. The skirmish was brief but effective. The enemy underestimated the small, coordinated team, and the scattered resistance caused them to pause. Liara realized that humans could think outside the rigid patterns Zitharans often relied upon, and that difference could be decisive. Back at the palace, the main army executed Elias's strategy. Smaller units flanked the enemy, creating confusion among their ranks. The battlefield became chaotic, yet controlled chaos. The very essence of human ingenuity applied to Zitharan precision. Explosions rocked the city outskirts as enemy ships collided with traps and ambushes. Liara led a strike team directly into the fray, cutting through enemy defenses with unmatched skill. Her soldiers, inspired by both her courage and Elias's unconventional tactics, fought with renewed vigor. "Forward," Liara shouted, rallying her battalion. "For Zithara and for life itself." The enemy struggled to adapt. Their disciplined formations began to break apart, leaving them vulnerable. Human tactics had introduced unpredictability that Zitharans could execute flawlessly, creating a devastating combination. Elias directed units remotely, sending instructions through secure channels. His strategic mind moved faster than any Zitharan command structure, identifying weaknesses and exploiting them in real time. The enemy fleet was in disarray, their confidence shattered. Meanwhile, in the midst of battle, Liara faced a formidable opponent, a commander of the enemy fleet who had survived countless wars. He was skilled, ruthless, and confident that he could kill the princess and crush Zithara's defenses. "Princess Liara," he sneered, "you should have died on that frontier. Now your city will fall with you." Liara raised her weapon, her gaze unwavering. "I am not alone, and we are stronger than you realize." The duel was fierce. Liara's strength and training matched against his cunning and experience. Yet every move she made was amplified by the support of her soldiers and Elias's strategic guidance. Humans had taught her to adapt in ways she had never imagined, and those lessons now saved her life. Finally, with a decisive strike, Liara defeated her opponent. He fell, stunned by her resilience and skill, and the battlefield momentum shifted further in Zithra's favor. From the palace, King Vorin watched the unfolding victory. His heart swelled with pride, not only for his daughter but also for the human who had changed the course of the battle. Elias's presence had introduced a new kind of strategy, one that blended courage, creativity, and adaptability. As enemy forces began to retreat, confusion and fear spreading among them, Liara and Elias regrouped with their battalion. Exhausted, injured, yet triumphant, they stood on a hill overlooking the battlefield. Smoke and fire rose from destroyed ships and armor, but the city remained intact. Liara turned to Elias, her expression serious but grateful. "You've done something no Zithran could. You've changed how we fight, how we survive." Elias shrugged. "I just did what humans do best. Adapt, improvise, fight smart." Liara smiled faintly. "It is more than that. You've shown us that courage and ingenuity are not bound by species. Even in the face of overwhelming odds, there is always a way." Vorin approached them, his massive frame imposing yet softened by relief. "Captain Elias, you have my respect. Your methods are unorthodox but effective. You have saved my daughter and my kingdom today." Elias inclined his head. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I only hope this victory is the start, not the end." Liara nodded. "It is. We cannot stop. Here, the galaxy is larger, stranger, and more dangerous than any of us imagined. If we survive this, we must continue to learn from each other, humans and Zitharans alike." The king looked at his daughter, then at Elias, and finally at the battlefield. He realized that his daughter had not only returned alive but had returned stronger, wiser, and with an ally who could teach Zithra a new kind of strength. "The enemy may regroup," Vorin said, "but today we have proven something important. Strength alone is not enough. Adaptation, intelligence, and unity can turn the tide of war. Perhaps humans have a place in our future after all." As the sun rose fully over the capital, casting golden light over the city, Liara and Elias walked through the battlefield. Soldiers cheered, survivors reunited, and the city began to breathe again. The humans' methods had not only won the day, they had inspired hope and a new way of thinking among the Zitharans. Liara turned to Elias one last time before entering the palace. "Thank you. For everything." Elias smiled faintly. "No need for thanks, we're just getting started." In the palace, King Vorin received his daughter fully, relieved and proud. Yet he knew the real work had begun, integrating human ingenuity into Zithra's culture, preparing for the next threats, and learning to trust a species he had never truly understood before. Outside, the city slowly returned to life. Soldiers repaired armor and weapons, families reunited, and whispers of humans' courage spread among the citizens. The galaxy was vast, full of unknown dangers, but now Zithra had learned something invaluable, that humans, with their resourcefulness and bravery, could change the course of history. Liara, standing beside Elias, felt a sense of purpose she had never experienced before. Together, human and princess, they had survived impossible odds, defeated a superior enemy, and proved that collaboration across species could achieve greatness. The battlefield had quieted. Smoke from burning ships and scorched terrain lingered in the air, mixing with the golden light of Zithra's rising sun. Soldiers moved through the aftermath, tending to the wounded and repairing what could be salvaged. The city had survived, the enemy fleet had been repelled, and for the first time in centuries, hope surged through the heart of the kingdom. Liara stood on a balcony overlooking the recovered city, her armor battered, but her posture unyielding. Captain Elias was beside her, scanning the horizon with a quiet intensity. The enemy's retreating ships were still visible as tiny points in the distance, but Liara's mind was already looking beyond victory. The fight had been won, yes, but the kingdom had changed. She could feel it in the air, The way the soldiers talked in hushed tones about the human who had changed their tactics. The way citizens whispered hope instead of fear. Father will need to address the council soon, Liara said, her voice calm but firm. Elias tilted his head. Your father trusts me. Enough. But convincing the rest won't be easy. Not everyone believes in humans yet. Liara nodded. She had seen it in the palace already. Generals and advisors, steeped in centuries of tradition, whispered in corners, their eyes darting toward Elias with suspicion and unease. But change, she knew, required persistence. Courage alone was not enough. Proof was necessary, and proof had been delivered on the battlefield. Inside the palace, King Vorin prepared to convene the council. The chamber filled with familiar faces, advisors, generals, nobles, all tense, all curious, all skeptical. Liara entered with Elias at her side. Murmurs rippled through the room. The idea that a human had helped the princess survive and even shape the battle strategy was hard for many to accept. Vorin raised a hand. Silence fell. Princess Liara has returned, he began. His voice was steady, commanding. Alive, and with a human, Captain Elias, who has proven himself invaluable to our victory. Some counselors stiffened. One older general, his face lined with years of war, spoke first. Your Majesty, we cannot rely on outsiders. Humans are unpredictable. Their loyalty cannot be guaranteed. Liara stepped forward, her voice firm. We survived because of him, because of humans, their ingenuity, their adaptability, their courage. These are qualities we can learn from. We cannot afford to ignore them. Not now. Not ever. Another counselor whispered. But they are different. Will they respect our ways? Liara's eyes hardened. Respect is earned, and it can be mutual. Captain Elias has proven he can fight alongside us, think with us, and survive with us. That is more than enough. Vorin studied his daughter, then looked at Elias. The human stood tall, calm, and composed. Unlike many outsiders, he had shown discipline, intelligence, and courage beyond what Zitherans had ever expected. You have earned my trust, Vorin said finally, and now perhaps we must earn yours. Captain Elias, you will have a place in our planning, our strategy, and our future. Let this victory be the first step of a new era. Elias inclined his head respectfully. Thank you, Your Majesty. I do not take this lightly. I will do my best to honor the trust you place in me. The council murmured again. But this time, there was a difference in the tone. The murmurs were quieter, filled with curiosity instead of disdain. The battle had proven the value of human insight, and there was no denying it. Over the next few days, Liara and Elias worked closely with the generals, combining human tactics with Zitharan strength. Patrols were reorganized, strategies were rewritten, and soldiers trained in new ways of thinking. The kingdom was learning quickly that victory required not just power, but adaptability and creativity. During this time, Liara also sought out the survivors of her battalion. Many had been injured, traumatized, or lost faith after the ambush, but seeing their princess return alive, and with a human ally, rekindled their hope. Elias worked alongside them, sharing techniques, ideas, and strategies. Slowly, skepticism turned to admiration. One evening, Liara and Elias walked through the palace gardens. The air was calm, and the city below seemed peaceful for the first time in months. You know, Liara said softly, my father and the council, they are starting to understand. But it will take time for the whole kingdom. Elias shrugged. Humans aren't fast to change either. But one victory, one demonstration of trust and courage, can shift everything. You've already started that. Liara looked at him, a faint smile on her lips. Humans, you're strange, reckless, clever, unpredictable. And yet, sometimes, you are exactly what we need. Elias grinned. That's kind of the human way. We survive by adapting, by thinking differently, by refusing to give up. Sounds like you've been learning that too. Liara's eyes glimmered with determination. Yes, and I will teach my people. We must be ready for whatever the galaxy throws at us next, and perhaps humans can help us explore it rather than fear it. Meanwhile, King Voron worked tirelessly to implement the new strategies across Zithera. The palace, once filled with rigid traditions and whispers of caution, now buzzed with energy, curiosity, and a cautious optimism. Humans had proven themselves, not just by saving lives, but by showing that different ways of thinking could lead to success. Word of the victory spread beyond Zithera. Neighboring systems, previously skeptical of the kingdom's strength, began to reconsider their stance. Alliances that had been fragile grew stronger, influenced by the knowledge that Zithera had adapted, survived, and embraced new ideas. Humans, through Elias, became symbols of ingenuity and courage, a bridge between species that had never truly understood one another. In the palace, Liara stood beside her father once more. "Father," she said, "today we won a battle, but the war for the future is just beginning. We need allies, friends, and understanding. Humans can teach us, guide us, and fight alongside us. We cannot ignore them." Voron placed a massive hand on her shoulder, his eyes softening. "You have grown wiser through this ordeal, my daughter, and you have shown me that the galaxy is larger than we imagined. Perhaps this is the beginning of a new era for Zithera, one where courage, adaptability, and trust are valued above fear and tradition." Liara nodded. "Yes, together we can face anything." Elias, standing nearby, allowed himself a small smile. For the first time, he felt a deep sense of belonging, not on his own planet, but here, among allies who had come to respect him. He was no longer just a human from a distant world. He was part of something larger, part of a new story being written across the stars. In the following weeks, Zithera transformed. Soldiers trained in hybrid tactics that combined human creativity with Zitheran strength. Scientists and engineers collaborated with humans to develop new technologies and strategies. The kingdom became stronger, more resilient, and more united than ever before. Liara continued to serve as a symbol of courage and hope. She visited survivors, led exercises, and shared her experiences with humans and Zitherans alike. Through her actions, she demonstrated that strength alone was not enough. Adaptability, courage, and cooperation were equally vital. Elias remained at her side, guiding, teaching, and learning. Together, they showed Zithera and the galaxy that even the most advanced civilizations could benefit from outsiders. Humans, once underestimated and feared, were now respected allies. One evening, as Liara and Elias stood on the palace balcony watching the stars, she spoke quietly. "The galaxy is vast, so many worlds, so many challenges. But if we face them, together, humans and Zitherans, we can survive, thrive, and grow stronger." Elias nodded. "And maybe one day the galaxy will see humans not as outsiders, but as partners, allies, friends." Liara smiled. "Yes, that is the future I want to fight for." Below them, the city of Zithera glowed with life and energy. Soldiers trained. With renewed determination, engineers built new machines, and citizens walked with hope in their hearts. The kingdom had been tested, faced overwhelming odds, and emerged stronger, not just through power, but through trust, cooperation, and the courage to embrace change. In the distance, enemy fleets regrouped, unaware that their assumptions had been shattered. They had underestimated humans, underestimated Liara, underestimated the power of unity and ingenuity. But Zithera was ready. And so were the humans who had become part of their story. Liara placed a hand on Elias's shoulder. "We've changed the game, Captain. And I think we've just begun." Elias looked at the stars, feeling a sense of purpose he had never known before. "Then let's keep changing it together."